What does the weather do to you as far as your emotional mood, right? And maybe it's just boiling under the surface there. Maybe it's just flowing under the surface. Things like that affect us. I've said before, we're a sensual people. We see, we hear, we feel, we smell. And what's the temperature got to do with how you make decisions? It could be a lot, as are a number of factors. So when is it the time to not make decisions? Dr. John Braccio joins us, Regional Psychological Services, with our usual Tuesday get-together on this very subject. Doc Braccio, I decided to bring you on this morning. How about that?
Listen, always a good introduction, Mike. Listen, it constantly amazes me how many people are willing to make major decisions without a lot of thought into how they're doing emotionally, okay? And I might add, with all this heat, that if you're kind of overwhelmed, might be a good time not to make major decisions, okay? They may feel they need to make a decision, and they make it regardless of the emotional or physical state they're in to make such a decision. My point is really not to say one must spend a lot of time before they make any decisions by checking off some list of factors. No, really, my point is that good decision-making requires a process that a person has developed to effectively use to make sure they do not make bad decisions. Included would be like full awareness of their emotional condition in relation to such things as anxiety, depression, and are they having a reasonable view of what's occurring in their lives? They need to determine important decisions will not be made when struggling emotionally, physically, fatigued, very tired, or overwhelmed with the responsibilities of life. A person needs to prioritize what important decisions need to be made and make them after careful thought. Persons often spend a lot of time thinking about decisions that are really not that important and do not focus on the things that are critical. You don't make decisions if in a hurry or distracted in a manner that does not allow you to fully pay attention to decisions you're making. Now, if you're not sure what to do, it's always wise to talk to an expert or someone you trust prior to making what could be a bad decision, really in an important matter. You want to set reasonable timelines or deadlines for making decisions rather than constantly ruminating and debating, what to do. And you've got to determine the options or choices prior to making decisions. And Mike, I've said this before, persons often make decisions, even important ones like buying or selling a home, buying a car, accepting or not accepting a job or job promotion without really weighing the impact a choice will have in their lives. They kind of just spontaneously will make really important decisions and say, oh my goodness, what did I do? Make sure you take control of your decision making. Don't make bad decisions based on input from persons who may be pressing you or pushing you to do something you have no desire to do, and quite candidly may not be in your best interest. Now, when you can't make a choice, okay, you're in a situation of constantly thinking about something and not able to make a decision, sometimes just the best thing to do is don't make it, sleep on it. Things often seem clearer after a good night's sleep, and your chances of not making a bad decision are really, much, much, much higher. So the main thing is when you make decisions, you really have to think about it, don't be overthinking, ruminating, but you have to set priorities. You have to decide what's important. And when they really are important decisions that relate to things in your life, you can't just run off and say, hey, I just bought a house, I just took this job. There's nothing wrong with spontaneity, but when it comes to making good decisions, and maybe we'll put in the word not making bad decisions, then you really have to think about it and plan, and just too many people don't do that, Mike. They get overwhelmed.
Yeah, we operate too much, I think, on emotion, and don't weigh consequences. But you know what? Then there's the other side, like you mentioned. You can overthink something, and
yes, you can.
We were talking earlier today about high achievers. Bezos he starts his wedding, the 3-day wedding today, and all that stuff. And yes. I said, if you ever think about the high achiever people in the world, they're all a little off. They're all kind of eccentric and weird, aren't they?
Well, I think a lot of times if you're the type of person who's developing something, there are many facets to it, and you're going to be a creative thinker often, and you're not going to be the average person. You're going to have kind of limitless views. You can kind of think you can do anything, and like Bezos having a giant wedding, but look what he's created. Or an Elon Musk. I mean, there are people out there, the Thomas Edisons of our generation, if you will, that are, and they're sometimes a little kooky, a little different. Maybe everybody's a little kooky and different, but I think it certainly shows. But it certainly shows with a lot of the highest achievers, because divergent thinkers look at things differently, and that's you need to be creative, and you need to be able to have a lot of foresight and move forward to really make, really the decisions that are going to move the world. Now, but for our topic, we're talking more about a person who's just trying to manage their life day to day. But go ahead.
Right, but I think you can draw parallels there in that sometimes, like these like folks, these high achiever folks, they'll just, it seems like anyway, I mean, we're not close to the situation, but they'll just sometimes make these decisions, and they are in a position to make them big. And big, bold, and it doesn't seem like a lot of forethought. Not often, but there's that. Again, we're not close to the situation, but I'm wondering if that transfers over to us on a smaller scale. We're just not in a financial position to soak it up and to make it happen.
I think in some degree that's true. The point is, though, if a big company can make an Etzel and get around it if it totally fails. But you can't do that in life. If you make a horrible job decision, you're going to end up in a situation where you just don't create other new jobs in a new company. You just have to kind of live with that decision. So, no, I'm not the least bit disputing the creativity of a Bezos as an example that can build literally an empire, having a vision. But on a smaller scale, a person living day to day, you just don't want to make bad decisions, and a lot of people do. They don't plan their bed. If you're really sick or you don't feel good, you're kind of overwhelmed emotionally.
Oh, yeah.
That's not the time to be out making major decisions. And like people do, people make decisions. I talk to people, and you do, just walking the road of life or in my work, where they'll say, I just don't know why I bought that $60,000 car or something, like struggling to make it. I shouldn't have done it, or I don't know why I took this job, or I don't want to know why I didn't take that job. And so you have to think about things. You just don't want to overly, ruminate. It's kind of like, the two proverbs, look before you leap, but then he who hesitates is lost.
Come on. Yeah. Which one? We've been thinking about homesteading for it seems like 10, 15 years, and still haven't pulled that trigger because it's frightening. I don't know. We still talk about it openly, but how do you know when is the right time to pull the trigger? I guess you just got to know yourself. Yeah.
That they're good decisions. And sometimes it is good to have a choice to go back, too, to something. Like there are people that at times can work in a situation where they take a leave of absence, if they get a chance to do that, or they take a leave when they're really not sure. And so we're in an age, where there are things coming at us so fast, you know what I mean, with social media. Just turn on, you can get information from 1,000 sources. And a lot of people speak like, I have the answer, I have the solution. Well, people may have ideas, but ultimately you have to have the solution for yourself. And you don't want to be making bad decisions that dig you in a hole. And a lot of people do seem to make bad decisions, and a lot of them. And often I talk to these people, and my point is, there are times you take a time out, when you don't feel good, when you're tired, when you're overly stressed. That's not the time to be making major decisions like, hey, let's move to Florida, or let's change jobs or do things. These are things you take a time out, and sometimes a good night's sleep, it can be a good idea. And now mind you, there are times you have to pull a trigger, like you have until Friday, as an example, to do a decision. The thing is, you just want to make sure you plan things, you think about things, and ultimately you make good decisions. And if you do, you're going to have a lot better life, and you're going to have a much better self-esteem, and you're going to really think you're king of the hill or queen of the hill. How does that sound?
Well, I'll tell you, the big hair, my wife Lisa, she questions her decision marrying me just about at least once a week. She's wondering, what was she thinking? But,
I bet she's probably saying, what a great guy I have.
Dr. John B. here, good man. Regional Psychological Services, Dr. John Braccio. Check him out. And we, as always, appreciate your help. Doc, we'll talk next week.
Okay, bye-bye.
See ya. It's 1320 WILS.